Many gamers, YouTubers, and gaming outlets really hate the Callisto Protocol. Honestly, go on any social media platform or look at any review and you'll see a lot of people talking about how it's one of the worst games of 2022 and fails to live up to being the successor to the cult classic Dead Space. While the Callisto Protocol and Dead Space do share the same creator and team and have a lot of similarities such as the main character's suits and weaponry, they are not the same at all. The Callisto Protocol isn't trying to beat Dead Space, and it's honestly one of the most fun games I've played all year of 2022. I don't have any nostalgia for the Dead Space series, even though I've played and beaten them all, and due to that, I think that's why I was able to go into the Callisto Protocol and enjoy it for what it is and what it's trying to be and do. So, let's talk about the Callisto Protocol. The story of the Callisto Protocol takes place in 2320 and follows Jacob Lee and his partner Max Barrow as they are doing cargo drops for the United Jupiter Company, or UGC, aboard the UGC Charon, a terrorist group known as the Outer Way, which is reportedly responsible for numerous terrorist attacks on civilians of Europa. Ends up boarding the UGC Charon and causing it to crash land on the UGC operated Black Iron prison on the moon of Callisto. After crash landing on the moon, Jacob is imprisoned along with the leader of the Outer Way, Danny Nakamura, and then the two team up with Elias Porter, who is a prisoner who is also trying to escape, and attempt to escape the prison. However, they ultimately learn of the Callisto Protocol, a plan to find a way to advance human evolution, as well as the biophages, which are monsters or monstrous abominations that have been mutated and experimented on, and the role of Warden Duncan Cole in the plan. Along the way, they must also confront Captain Leon Ferris and learn the truth behind the events of Callisto. The gameplay of the Callisto Protocol feels incredibly weighty, which means that every moment carries with it a ton of momentum and by proxy purpose. Jacob isn't the fastest character in gaming, and in many ways he feels incredibly slow when it comes to dodging and general maneuverability, especially with this game's default sensitivity for the camera controls being set to 50 out of 100. I personally had to move the sensitivity up to 80 to have a better feeling for the camera, and I'd encourage you to change the camera settings if you pick up this game. Jacob can walk, sprint, dodge incoming attacks, melee with a pipe and stun baton, shoot from the various guns he gets, and crouch for those stealthy moments that include stealth kills. From a third-person shooter perspective, the Callisto Protocol isn't anything stellar, and from a survival horror perspective, the game isn't at all groundbreaking or scary. But regardless of that, I still find this to be an enjoyable game. Like Dead Space, the Callisto Protocol shows Jacob's health by way of the implant on the back of his neck known as a core device, or a CORE device. You can replenish his health by way of injectable packs that you find at medical stations on walls, by purchasing them, or by defeating enemies or opening chests and finding them. If you love survival horror games and the way many give you a limited inventory, then you will find that the Callisto Protocol carries over a limited inventory and forces you to resource manage. When you start the game, you will have a very limited inventory, allowing you to carry no more than 6 items at a time, not including weapons. As time passes, you gain access to your powered suit, which increases the amount of damage you can take and vastly increases your inventory space. Since there are no item boxes, you'll either need to sell off items you don't need at the 3D printing station, more on that later, or drop them right where you are. This is a callback to a mechanic featured in Resident Evil 0. An important aspect to know about the Callisto Protocol is its linear structure. This game is very much on rails from start to finish and is an A to B affair, but there are a lot of points where you can travel off the beaten path and find hidden rooms with weapon schematics, high value sellable items, ammo, and more. These areas can be easy to miss, but they yield a lot of value for the time you spend seeking them out. Where the Callisto Protocol excels is in its take on combat, which, well, it reminds me of Punch-Out, and I'll get to that in a minute. In particular, its take on melee combat, which is the core mechanic that sets this game apart from others. When you encounter enemies, you will often have to face them head on, well, at least initially, and will need to put them down with either your gun or your pipe or stun baton. These encounters can contain many enemies at once, but they almost always boil down to one-on-one encounters or needing to force the enemy into one-on-one encounters, with the enemies ultimately, in many aspects, waiting their turn to attack you. Enemies will swing at you, while others will spit acid at you, while many others can even snatch you from across the room and try to drag you to them. When an enemy swings at you, you can either hold left or right on the thumbstick or hold back, which will cause Jacob to either evade the attack in either direction or block the incoming attack. Again, this really makes me think of Punch-Out, so I think the devs are fans of that series. But anyway, back to the review. Some enemies will swing at you anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 times in a row. In these situations, you can dodge all of these attacks or block them all. I don't recommend blocking often, and then wail on them with your melee weapon, which then opens up the ability to pull off a quick shot from your gun that will either heavily damage them or kill them in one hit. The dodging mechanic is pretty neat, as you can chain several dodges together, which often feels like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out when the enemies fail to hit you. The only thing missing here is being able to do a star punch and just KO them in one hit. I can't recall any other games that utilize this same mechanic in recent memory or pulls it off as well as this game does. While it does take some getting used to, it can ultimately feel very exhilarating. You get access to several weapons, from pistols to shotguns to an assault rifle and more. Your base melee weapon is a steel pipe, which becomes a steel baton, and you will find weapon schematics in the various chapters of the game that you can take to the 3D printer and print at the cost of some Callisto credits, which is this game's in-game currency. You can do several things at these 3D printers, such as sell off items that you have in your limited inventory to clear up space and get Callisto credits. You can also upgrade your weapons to give them various buffs, such as increased damage capability, higher ammo capacity, alternate firing for some guns, and for your stun baton you can gain a stronger crowd clearing attack and the ability to break arms with the baton. Once you down an enemy, you should always go over to them and do a stomp, as this will often yield various things such as health, Callisto credits, ammo, and items that you can sell. Yes, the stomp is the same as it was in Dead Space in both look and functionality, so I mean, it's not to be anything surprising considering the same team made Dead Space. Since Callisto credits are very scarce and upgrading your gear can get expensive, I recommend focusing on upgrading your baton, pistol, assault rifle, and grip, or GRP. Speaking of the grip, that is another thing that makes this game stand out, even though it is like a weapon that you get in Dead Space. This arm attachment allows you to essentially force pull enemies and objects to you and then hurl them away from you. This is really helpful for clearing out enemies, as you can use this to grab and throw them into environmental hazards like spiked walls, spinning fan blades off cliffs, and you can use it to pick up explosives and throw it at them, which can often kill them instantly. The Callisto Protocol really allows you to creatively handle almost any situation you get into, and that ends up being one of the most viscerally satisfying aspects of this game. This is a very physical, carnal, just savagely brutal game, and I love it. Graphically, the Callisto Protocol is one of the most beautiful games I've seen in years. The level of photorealism on the character models and environments is absolutely jaw-dropping and puts a lot of AAA games to shame. Jacob Lee looks so close to Josh Duhamel that there were times I had to wonder if I was watching a real-life movie unfolding, as the level of detail is just that high. It's just missing the patches of gray and the gray hairs that Josh Duhamel has in real life, considering he's 50 years old at this point. Environments are equally stunning to look at, with a wealth of details in every structure you see, and elemental aspects like fire, pools of water, sparks of electricity, and snow. It's just amazing to see no matter what platform you're playing this on. However, if you have the capacity or capability to play this on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, or a high-end gaming PC, then please do so. Audio-wise, the game is equally spectacular, with its haunting and atmospheric ambience when walking down eerily dark and dank corridors that will set the hairs on the back of your neck on edge, while also giving you that thrilling action movie pulse-pounding soundtrack when the moments call for it. The sounds of the creatures you encounter and the sounds of the machinations on the derelict prison are done so well that you should definitely have a pair of high-end gaming headphones, audiophile headphones, or a surround sound setup to truly appreciate it all. The voice acting is great as well, with Josh Duhamel being perfect in the role of Jacob Lee, and even Resident Evil 3 and Villages, Jeff Shine being in the game add to its epicness. The way their minute mannerisms are delayed on the character models, as well as their delivery of lines and cadence and tone, is truly something to see and hear. While I may have showered the game with praise, it isn't without a set of issues that have hampered the experience. I initially played the Callisto Protocol on PC as I ran the game on my desktop that has an RTX 3070 rocking an i7-10700K with 32GB of DDR4 3200 MHz on ultra settings at 4K 120 frames per second with DLSS quality turned on, and on my gaming laptop, which is an Asus ROG M16 with an RTX 3060 rocking an i9 11900H with 40GB of DDR4 3200Hz of RAM on high settings at 1440p at 120 frames per second, and both having Windows 11. Let's just say that my experience with the game on both my computers pre-patches was god-awful, with me barely able to maintain 60 frames per second, let alone 30 frames per second, with the game constantly dipping to below 25 frames per second. Because of this, I ended up buying a copy of the game for PlayStation 5 digitally and had the best experience with this game with no hiccups whatsoever. It is frustrating that the game is so poorly optimized for PC, especially ones with the latest RTX 4080 and 4090 graphics cards, even after all the patches, as I really want to enjoy this game on my rigs as well as enjoy it on the go on the Steam Deck, which also struggles to run this game. So my advice would be to pick this up on consoles if you plan on playing it, as the PC experience is just not where it's at. The last part that I want to bring up as an issue is the lack of New Game Plus. Once you beat this game, that's it. There is no way to start the game with any of your previously acquired gear or currency, which ultimately makes this one and done type of affair for the time being, until further patches bring in post-game content and the upcoming expansion DLC for the story. In wrapping up this review, the Callisto Protocol has been one of my favorite gaming experiences of 2022. Yes, the game has its buggy aspects of it and doesn't run good on PC. It's incredibly linear, has a learning curve to the combat mechanics, and it also isn't a very scary game. And honestly, it isn't Dead Space at all. And honestly, I wouldn't even call it a survival horror game. It's more of a survival shooter game. Regardless of that, I still had a fun time with this game, as it sucked me into its world from the moment I hit play. While I may not recommend you spend full retail value for this game, if you happen to find it on sale or have some trading credits to get a discount, then I suggest you give the Callisto Protocol a go.